Doesn't it strike you as strange? We're constantly talking about boomers and millennials. We examine Gen Z as if they're a newly discovered species, but there's a generation that has always been right there among us, almost never talked about, practically invisible. Generation X, roughly those born between 1965 and 1980. The older brothers and sisters at work who never complain. The sometimes distant, emotionally reserved parents many of us grew up with. The people who found the internet, built it even, but never felt the need to share their breakfast on it. And here's something no one really tells you. They're probably the most misunderstood living generation. For the first time in history, this many children were left to fend for themselves. Picture this. It's 1978. You're 8 years old, walking into an empty house because both of your parents work. No smartphones, no cameras, no game consoles. No one checking if you're okay. You use your key, go inside, make yourself something to eat, do your homework alone. And then you just wait. According to a study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry, around 7 million children in 1984 were regularly unsupervised after school. Most of this generation learned early that you cannot rely on someone always being there. That empty house didn't just make them independent, it drilled something deeper into them. Actions have real consequences, and you can't talk your way out of them. When parents eventually came home, the rules were clear, strict, and immediate. No one cared how you felt, and feelings weren't something you talked about anyway. You messed up? You paid for it, right then and there. Psychologically, this created what experts call a high-contingency environment, a direct link between actions and outcomes, with no buffer in between. Their brains learned to anticipate cause and effect in real time. That's why Gen X often sees 3 steps ahead in ways that still surprise younger generations. They grew up watching their parents complain about instability while divorce rates exploded in the 70s and 80s. They saw people give their lives to companies only to be laid off the moment a restructuring came around. Everyone was told, work hard, follow the rules, and things will work out. Then the rules changed overnight. Psychologists call the result defensive pessimism. Gen X just calls it being realistic. They're not truly pessimists. They built an emotional wall. They knock on wood when something good happens, but deep down, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop, because, historically, it usually did. That's a major reason they're so underrepresented online. They grew up when privacy was normal. If you made a mistake as a kid, only a handful of people knew. No phones, no viral videos, just strange memories stuck in a basement or a parking lot. The idea of broadcasting your life to strangers doesn't feel exciting to them, it feels dangerous. It's not that they don't understand technology, it's that they learned early. The less people know about you, the safer you are. Gen X leaned heavily into irony. Make a joke, keep your distance, smile before it hurts. It makes sense when you consider the context. They grew up under the shadow of the Cold War. Teachers talked about nuclear war like it was a normal part of the day. Schools ran duck and cover drills, as if that would save anyone. When adults act like everything could explode at any moment, but insist you shouldn't worry about it, you learn to hold 2 contradictory ideas at once, and to stay emotionally guarded. And yet, what's truly remarkable is this. Despite all of it, Gen X developed a distinct way of working, and they never talk about it. They just do the work. Their work ethic formed early, through jobs that now feel almost extinct. Delivering newspapers at 5 a.m., bagging groceries, running fast food cash registers where you had to calculate change in your head when the machine broke. These weren't resume builders. A 12-year-old being responsible for an entire neighborhood's newspaper route? doesn't exactly align with today's idea of childhood. They watched firsthand as their parents' generation was chewed up by corporate structures. That's why they never truly believed in company loyalty, but they believed deeply in their own competence. They can't control layoffs, but they can control being the most valuable person in the room when layoffs happen. At the core of Gen X psychology lies a strange paradox. They are both the most independent and the quietest collaborators. They rarely ask for help. They've been handling things alone since they were 8. But if you need help, they'll show up without complaint and without posting about it online. That comes from forming tight peer bonds out of necessity when adults weren't around. Their relationship with authority is equally complex. They respect competence, not titles. If you earned your position through skill, they'll follow you anywhere. If you have a fancy title but don't know what you're doing, their patience is 0. Gen X questions authority because they grew up watching incompetent authorities make catastrophic decisions. From Watergate to Iran-Contra to the disastrous handling of the AIDS crisis, they witnessed repeated institutional failure. The youngest Gen Xers graduated straight into the dot-com crash. The oldest were hit by the 2008 financial crisis right at their peak. They've endured multiple economic traumas, which is why they're more likely to have multiple income streams. Not because they're naturally entrepreneurial, but because they've learned that nothing lasts forever. Gen X also struggles with what some experts call self-reliance patterns bordering on anxiety. They are exceptional in crises, but that often comes from a deep resistance to depending on others. Research published in the Journal of Adult Development shows that Gen X seeks social support far less during stressful periods, not because they lack people to ask, but because asking feels like losing. This mindset shaped how they use knowledge as well. Before the internet, information carried weight. Answers required hours in libraries, flipping through card catalogs. Knowledge had a physical cost, time and effort, and that changed how it stuck. Cognitive psychologists call this deep encoding. Information acquired through effort is stored more durably in memory. They learned to fix things with their hands. When a bike chain slipped or the TV started flickering, you didn't call a repairman. You flipped the bike over, got your hands greasy, and figured it out. This built a mechanical intuition, the belief that with enough patience and a screwdriver, you could master the physical world. Now they watch their children grow up in a completely different reality, a world of constant surveillance, hyper-involved parenting, and non-stop sharing. They gave their kids the attention they never had, but they worry they've made them too soft, too dependent, too visible. Because in Gen X logic, visibility equals vulnerability. The truth is, Gen X may be the last generation that truly understands being alone with their thoughts, being bored, solving problems without Googling the answer. Not better than other generations, just different, shaped by a very particular moment in history. They're a bridge between generations, and bridges don't draw attention. They just stand there, doing their job, holding everything together, expecting nothing in return. And perhaps the most defining trait of Generation X is this: they don't need to be seen.